The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. Chapter 15. Dying to Heal. Part 2. Luna cocked her head.
Tristan? Who is this Tristan?
Elias flinched visibly. Luna watched as he began to shake violently. He seemed to grow pale, and his hands clenched and unclenched, over and over again. His eye closed, and he shook his head slowly. The human was interrupted by Night Flash shoving him roughly. As Elias cried out in shock, the pony pounced on his chest, nuzzling him aggressively in the face. Elias spat as he tried to pry the Pegasus off him, but undeterred by the flailing human, Flash kept up his assault of snuggles. His wings flapped out, slapping Elias repeatedly in the face as the Pegasus twirled in a circle. Luna couldn't help but giggle in the confusion as Night Flash did his strange dance across the human, leaping up and down the bed as Elias tried to grab the suddenly crazy pony. Eventually, Night Flash moved just a hair too slow, and Elias snagged his hind leg. With a yelp from Night Flash, the human flipped him over and held him firmly in both hands. Elias' face contorted in a mixture of irritation, confusion, and a touch of concern. "In the politest way I can possibly think of," Elias said slowly. "What the fuck was that, Flash?" The pony grinned sheepishly, not even trying to squirm away from Elias' grip. "I may have gone overboard in the distraction, but it worked, didn't it? You're fine?" Elias blinked stupidly at the pony, his fingers loosened as he stared at him. "Huh," was all the human said. Night Flash sat on his chest for a moment, then looked pointedly at Elias' left arm. The human raised it dumbly. Night Flash grinned and dove under it, resuming his former position around the limb as he got comfortable against the human. Elias' hand dropped on his head and began scratching his ears, and Flash chirped happily as he settled, looking out happily at all the stunned ponies in the room. Is it really that simple?" Scalpel asked. "A bit of minor aggravation as a distraction and just like that? No more panic?" Night Flash snorted. "Of course not. It's a useful trick, but it won't always work, especially if you can't see the signs like I did. I just got lucky is all, and it worked out." He looked to Luna. "Princess, can we avoid the T word from now on, please?" She nodded. "Of course, it shall be driven from my mind." Oh, it was perfect. Night Flash exceeded her expectations, and Luna had no doubt that the new Bookbinder was formulating her own methods of distracting the human if her face was any indication. The two of them could likely calm Elias down from anything, and the longer they were together as friends, Luna suspected that ability would only grow stronger. Luna could see in real time how the pieces were beginning to fit together. She did her best not to squeal in excitement. She mostly succeeded, though she had a goofy-looking smile on her face. Elias was the first to notice it, and he matched it with a scowl. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked, trying to put a growl in his voice. Luna snorted softly. "I think I'm beginning to understand how you are only 19 years old. A fool by equestrian standards, yet you have so much experience. Your life is constantly shifting. You never seem to stop going forward." Elias nodded in agreement, sighing loudly as Luna heard a squeak and noticed Bookbinder twitch slightly out of the corner of her eye. But she decided to ignore the motion. It was likely nothing. "Yeah, I can never catch a fucking break," he grumbled. Princess?" Bookbinder stuttered. Luna looked at the unicorn and quickly noticed that the pony looked like she was on the verge of exploding. Her whole body was on end, and her tail flicked back and forth at the vigorous pace. An aura of energy seemed to glow around the pony in a vaguely familiar manner. Luna couldn't tell if she should feel nervous around the pony, so she took a cautionary step back. Following the unicorn's eyes, she noticed that they were fixed squarely on Elias, who was beginning to shift nervously in his bed. Luna shot a glance to Scalpel, who quickly moved away from the bed as well. "Yes, God's pony Bookbinder?" Luna responded cautiously. "You said Elias is
19?
Bookbinder's eyes twitched slightly and her forelegs inched forward.
As in years?
She squeaked. Elias shot Luna a glance. Princess, please do not answer that question. I've seen that look, and goddammit, I've had enough hugs today from one pony. I don't need a second one on me. Luna doubted that. In fact, he likely needed many more pony hugs. They had so far done wonders for the human. What could telling Bookbinder his age really do? It wasn't like she could seriously injure him, and they were already in the infirmary. Luna smiled slightly as she prepared to repeat his age. Evidently, someone else had the same idea. Nightflash snorted softly into Elias's ribs. Yes, Bindy, Red is indeed 19 years old. You heard the princess right. Bookbinder's pupils consumed her entire eye, and she began to quiver violently. Elias looked at Nightflash with hatred in his eyes. You fucking traitor, he said softly. Nightflash grinned and settled back into the crook of Elias's arm, his eyes watching Bookbinder. Love you too, Red. The unicorn struck. With a loud cry, she seemed to fly through the air, an amazing feat given her lack of wings. She landed on the bedspread of Elias's right with just enough time down to springboard off the bed and launch into the human's head. It happened in the blink of an eye, and Luna couldn't suppress a guffaw as she looked at Elias, who was trying to pry on now weeping Bookbinder from the side of his head. The unicorn didn't budge as she stroked his hair with her hoof.
My baby boy,
she cried.
Don't worry, Mama's here.
Elias opened his mouth only to find her tail flapping in his face. He spit out the hair as he growled, still trying to push her away. What the fuck is wrong with you people? He tried to yell. I'm still the same age I was 5 minutes ago when you dragged my bleeding ass in here. Bookbinder's eyes snapped open and she looked at the bloody wounds decorating every part of Elias's body, as if she was seeing the injuries for the first time. She squealed in horror, and she stroked his hair harder.
Don't worry, my baby boy. We'll make sure Dr. Scalpel gets you all fixed up, good as new. Mama will be here this entire time.
Elias looked out from beneath the unicorn in visible confusion. Have I missed something? He said. Where's this mama stuff coming from? He looked to Scarlet and Scalpel, who both shrugged in confusion. His eyes stopped only momentarily on Nightflash, who he realized was whispering in Bookbinder's ears, goading her on. That left one pony in the room, and Elias looked to Luna. Princess, what is going on? Have I done something? Friends is one thing, but what just happened? What is currently Bookbinder, god damn it, stop petting me. The unicorn tutted and tapped him lightly on the back of the head.
Now, don't use that language, young man. Just let Mama spoil you for a few minutes.
And then she immediately resumed her snuggling of his head. Elias looked at Luna again in desperation. The alicorn giggled as she watched Bookbinder play with Elias's hair.
I believe I know the cause of the sudden motherly affection, she said calmly.
Bookbinder shifted, perching herself on Elias's shoulder as she tissed and conjured a magical brush, untying the string that kept Elias's hair tied together. The unicorn fluffed it out and began combing it with the conjured brush. Elias had the look of someone who was being physically tortured. His face was beet red, though whether it was from genuine anger or just embarrassment, Luna did not know. Elias gestured silently for her to continue, so she did so, a smile decorating her face as Bookbinder fretted over the human's hair.
In a time before my banishment, wars were extremely uncommon, but small-scale skirmishes and raids were not. Many towns were sacked with their adult population taken or killed.
Luna shuddered in the memory of the burning buildings and razed towns.
Suffice to say that a widespread peace was tentative at best. Regardless, many a foal were left orphaned in these outlying communities, and despite my sister and I's best efforts, we simply could not find homes quickly enough. Certain communities were attacked more than others, and it was a struggle to keep the towns themselves safe, let alone locate adequate homes for all the abandoned foals.
Bookbinder frowned.
Elias, you really need to take better care of your mane. It's all knotted and tangled. Are you brushing it regularly?
No, Elias growled. I wash it and tie it back. It's all the hair care I need. He looked to Luna. Please continue, princess. I am eager how this story relates to whatever this is, he said, pointing at Bookbinder as she yanked at a stubborn knot of hair. Luna enjoyed watching the mare fret over the human, and she had half a mind to remain silent just to watch it. She wondered briefly if she should get a camera. The expression on Elias's face told her that it would likely be a bad idea at the time. She cleared her throat and continued.
By comparison, certain interior communities were stricken by different ailment, whether through disease or...
She growled slightly at the memories of a certain chaotic entity.
Magical means. Many mares were left barren, unable to produce the children they so desperately wanted. It took us a few years, but we'd eventually realize that these two problems had one very simple solution.
Elias leaned forward as he tried to look back at Bookbinder in disgust. Did you just lick me? Bookbinder seized his head in her hooves and dragged him back.
Hush! It got the tangle undone, didn't it?
Scalpel snorted with laughter, and Elias's eyes immediately found the pony. He pointed a finger at the unicorn. You're lucky I don't have anything to throw. He quickly found a bundle of bandages floating in front of his hand. Elias glanced back at Bookbinder, who smiled back.
I can't let my baby boy get mocked by the other ponies, now can I?
Elias grumbled softly in thanks, then looked dangerously at Scalpel. The unicorn doctor snorted. Oh, please, it's a roll of gauze. Do you really think you can make that? He yelped as a roll of bandages drilled him in the nose. Luna was surprised when she saw his nose begin to bleed slightly. Scalpel pressed the hoof of his bloody nose and looked at wide eyes at the human who was staring smugly back. What the buck, Elias? He shouted. That really hurt. Elias snorted. Serves you right. Besides, you act like I didn't also give you the tool to solve the problem. Scalpel growled, and the roll of bandages raised as his magic, ready to throw it back at the human. When Bookbinder hopped off top of Elias's head, growling loudly at the doctor. Don't you dare, Scalpel, she said, her horn charging with crackling green energy. Scalpel paled and gnawed dumbly. He unrolled the length of the bandage and pressed it against his nose, levitating the rest of the bundle somewhere else. Only once his horn stopped glowing did Bookbinder return to her chipper, mothering self as she began to brush Elias's hair anew. Elias looked with his one eye at Luna. So, this solution of yours, what was it?
My sister and I crafted a simple but powerful runic spell,
Luna said.
We laid it across Equestria with one purpose: draw loving parents to abandoned foals. A sort of adoption at first sight.
She gestured to Bookbinder.
Upon first contact, the mother would smother a foal with love and affection, solidifying their place as a parent in the foal's heart.
She smiled wistfully.
'Twas a wonderful thing to witness in my day. I was only a wish I could have witnessed what Tia was like when she adopted our fair niece. It must have been a most ridiculous sight.
Luna paused wistfully, then sighed.
I'm getting off track. She looked at Elias. Due to the relative peace of the last 1,000 years, the rune has remained largely unused, as there are a few foals who are orphaned that are not immediately scooped up by doting parents, primarily due to the improvements made to our adoption system. Since you physically appear to be a grown adult, Elias, this reaction is likely a delayed one. Bookbinder must have tapped into the old runic magic in some form. Nightflash, you two have recently begun a romantic relationship, correct?
Nightflash nodded happily. Yep, we've already begun talking about how you want everything to work out. Proposals, engagements, marriage. The Pegasus flushed red. Having kids of our own. Luna smiled widely.
Indeed, you have my congratulations.
She looked back at Elias, who frowned deeply. But I'm not a child, the man said. Even if we were just go by age, I'm a grown adult by human standards.
But not by equestrian standards, however,
Luna replied.
For ponies, full maturity is only reached at the age of 25. Most ponies do not leave home permanently until they are just short of 30 years. I believe the magic is based purely on years lived, and so Bookbinder has identified you as an orphan foal that is in need of love and care.
Elias twitched slightly. So, is this all purely the result of some random magic? That seems... His frown deepened. I don't know how I feel about that. Luna could see the conflict in his eyes. She imagined it was likely the same eternal fight he had when deciding to make friends again. This, however, was a much more serious situation. Luna took a few more steps forward and laid a hoof on his leg, seeking to comfort him.
Elias, these feelings, while provoked through magical means, were within Bookbinder the entire time. Everything she feels for you is absolutely genuine. They were just being temporarily amplified by the spell. These feelings will still exist after the rune wears off.
Elias flinched slightly. Luna wondered briefly if her words had made things worse. Bookbinder, however, didn't seem to notice this rapidly depressing mood, as she hummed happily as she ran a comb through Elias's hair.
You know, you really should get your mane cut, Elias. Yours is all long and unstylish. How are you ever going to find a respectable mare to bring us home?
Elias snorted, trying to force himself back to a calmer state of mind. Pretending I didn't hear the second part. My hair is fine. I keep it clean, and that's what matters. Bookbinder huffed.
Cleaning is only part of the job. You have to make it look good. I'm thinking braids, one big long one down the back. Oh, maybe a few beads as well. That will have the mares positively swooning over you.
You are not putting beads in my hair. It's fine as it is. Elias growled, and Luna believed the mild banter had successfully pulled him away from whatever dark place his mind was drifting towards.
Hush you.
Bookbinder scoffed.
No son of mine is going to run around looking like some sort of degenerate.
Luna watched Elias's face shift through a range of emotions as his mouth flapped wordlessly. His body grew tense, and his face paled slightly. Bookbinder must have felt him stiffen, because she stopped combing his hair.
Elias? Baby? Are you alright?
She asked, her voice tinged with fear. Nightflash sat up, studying Elias's face. Red? Is this another... Elias shook his head. No, he said softly. I think this is something else. Bookbinder climbed off his shoulders and onto his chest. She tried to make eye contact, but Elias's eyes seemed to stare into nothing as she whimpered softly.
Elias? Please speak to me. I'm sorry if I got carried away.
Elias blinked once. His mouth drifted open slowly before her, his eyes looking elsewhere. I think I need to. Bookbinder crawled off of him as he rolled onto his side, staring blankly at the wall, tears streaming down Bookbinder's face as Nightflash rose, rubbing her back softly.
I'm sorry, Elias. I didn't mean to hurt you. She
sobbed lightly. Luna's heart went out to the mare. She had seen something like this happen before as well. A foal who simply had no interest in being adopted. A small mistake by the rune that left a broken-hearted parent with nobody to shower with love. She frowned at Elias's back, her anger flashing briefly at the human. How dare he reject such powerful love? Bookbinder sniffed, rubbing at her eyes.
I'll go. I know you don't want to see me right now, and I can understand if you...
She squirmed slightly as Elias's arm reached over and scooped her up, carrying the pony to his front. Luna shifted slightly so she could see, and she smiled widely as she saw that Bookbinder was being hugged tightly against the human's chest, his large arms keeping her from moving anywhere. His eyes were only half open, as if he was struggling to stay awake. Nobody said you could go anywhere. Elias growled softly, his eyes drifting closed. Bookbinder watched as he seemed to nod off, and she smiled, nuzzling into his chest. She seemed to relish the warmth the human's body gave off. Bookbinder motioned for Nightflash to join her. The Pegasus climbed atop Elias's side and settled there before letting his wings hang down, covering them like a blanket. Luna watched as the pair of ponies sighed happily before their eyes closed as well. They began to snore slightly, a sign they were completely asleep. Luna was amazed. She had no idea what to think of the encounter. She prayed desperately that it would stick, that Elias would accept the family that had just unofficially adopted him. Friends were extremely important, but she'd never even considered how missing a family might affect the human. Luna needed to rethink her approach, needed to consult with doctors who were watching even now. As the three settled completely and the snores began to grow in intensity, she motioned for Scalpel and Scarlet to follow her out of the infirmary.
Come,
she said softly.
Let us leave them and rest in peace. Doctor, please try to keep as many ponies away from here as possible. Even if Elias accepts this relationship, he will be embarrassed if too many ponies know of it. He might try to push them away, and that is the absolutely last thing we want.
Scalpel nodded as he cast a glance back towards the sleeping ponies and human. Of course, Princess. My lips are sealed. Luna nodded and smiled. They closed the doors quietly.
Good, Scarlet Shield. Please report to Captain Nightshade and alert her that Night Flash and Bookbinder on an important mission for me and will miss the regular guard shift. If she wants more information than that, she can come to me.
The Pegasus saluted. Yes, Princess. Luna waited for him to race off, but Scarlet stood in place, looking as if he wanted to say something. Luna tilted her head slightly.
Is there something else, God's pony?
The red Pegasus sighed and looked down, his expression turning dejected. I just wanted to tell you that all of this is my fault. Elias went over to the Royal Guards because he was trying to find my old combat trainer. If it wasn't for me, none of this would have happened. Luna smiled.
You are correct, and that is the reason I must thank you.
The Pegasus looked at her in confusion. But Elias got hurt. Shouldn't I be punished or something? Luna snorted.
Elias was right about one thing. He was going to get in a fight with Captain Chaser, and in all likelihood, he will continue to pick fights and get injured. While his metaphor was a bit odd, it rings true. Elias is a little troublemaker, and so trouble will continue to find him, and he will continue to get hurt.
She looked to the closed doors.
But it seems that through his physical suffering, he is beginning to find the basics of emotional peace. If all goes well, Elias now has a loving pair of parents that will help him out to stay out of trouble. This is a direct result of the situation he finds himself in, and so you have my thanks, Scarlet Shield. Perhaps Elias is needed to be hurt to find his peace.
Luna cleared her throat, straightening to her full stature.
Regardless, you shall not be punished. Carry out your orders to Captain Nightshade,
she growled softly.
I have one more pony to see today. Scalpel, post a sign on the door. I need you with me in the throne room.
Luna walked briskly towards the throne room, anger on her mind. While she realized the wisdom of Elias's words, she also knew that his definition of light punishment and her own were very different. A message needed to be sent, alpha or not. Midnight Chaser needed a sufficient punishment. As she approached the small door side that led her to the throne, Luna felt her ears twitch as she realized she heard yelling. She quickened her pace as she opened the door before her, revealing the throne room. Of particular note were 3 ponies. First, her sister was sitting on the throne, staring down with an expression of shock and confusion at the other 2. Luna quickly noted the source of the yelling, a white-maned Pegasus named Ice Blossom. The Pegasus was standing in front of Captain Chaser, yelling, and occasionally smacking the guard captain as he simply took the abuse, a look of silent acceptance on his face. Even with the bandages decorating his body, Chaser looked like he had been through the ringer. His eyes seemed glazed, and even standing at attention as she had ordered, his shoulders were slumped. He would flinch occasionally at the verbal abuse his sister was throwing at him, but otherwise, he was still. He didn't even seem to notice the second princess now in the room. Luna listened to Ice Blossom as she climbed her steps to her throne, sitting next to her sister silently.
And another thing, are you fucking serious? You couldn't just let things end? Oh no, I was right there, Chase. Why the fuck did you call a human a coward when his friends convinced him to walk away? Are you dense? Are you actually fucking stupid? The situation was done, but no, not for you. You just had to insult the human right there in front of every pony.
She slapped him, the sound echoing through the throne room.
Of all the stupid things, Chase, he was asking for a fucking trainer. He wasn't trying to overthrow Equestria. He wasn't trying to right your mare, friend. He was asking for help. And that's another thing. The human asked, Chase, why the fuck didn't you just let me go help him?
She slapped him again.
You know what? I don't care, because you didn't let me. Me! Like I'm some kind of idiot. So that's what caused it,
Celestia said softly. Luna glanced at her sister, and Celestia looked to her with visible confusion.
What happened this afternoon, Luna? One moment I am concluding my day court, and the next Captain Chaser is being led in by Ice Blossom covered in battle wounds. Shouldn't he be in the infirmary?
Luna gestured for Dr. Scalpel to begin working on Chaser. The unicorn nodded silently, and he levitated a small array of tools behind him as he began to silently prod at Chaser's bandages. Ice Blossom either didn't notice, or didn't care as she continued laying into her brother.
And let's not even talk about you almost lost that bucking fight. Really, Chase? One little human was too much for our fearless captain. You should have been able to take him down in 2 hits, and quietly. But no, Mr. Big Shot here wants to try and make a fool out of the human. So what does he do? Duels him with wing blades. In the process, you seem to have forgotten that wing blades cut things.
She slapped him for a 3rd time.
And you didn't even win with them, Chase. You had to use the human's own knife to put him down. Should I be submitting a resignation, Chase? Did I go to the wrong stallion for help with my Royal Guard exams? Because if I did, I need to know, so that I can tell Princess Celestia why she shouldn't throw our entire family onto the moon for being bucking deranged.
Luna snorted softly, nudging Celestia with her wing.
How about that, Tia? Do you want to throw some of our subjects onto the moon?
Celestia sighed, shaking her head.
I have no idea where they keep coming up with the idea that the moon is my solution for everything. It was one time, Luna. One time.
Luna snorted again as Celestia seemed to realize who she was talking to. Her sister grinned sheepishly.
Sorry, Lulu. I know it still must be a sensitive subject.
Luna waved her hoof dismissively.
Nonsense, sister. It has been several years since my return. I have atoned. I am princess of once more, and I have you back. It is all in the past and shall remain there.
She looked down at the ponies before her.
This, however, is in the present, and I must be dealt with. Fear not, sister. I shall handle it swiftly.
Luna cleared her throat loudly, and for a second, Ice Blossom whirled on her in anger. Her mouth opened as if she would snap on the princess for interrupting her tirade. When she saw who was about to mouth off at, she froze in shock, then strained into a quick salute.
My apologies, princess. I was just trying to educate my brother on why the decisions he made today were incorrect.
Luna kept an even expression on her face.
Quite. Regardless, I need you elsewhere.
Ice Blossom bowed her head.
I apologize, princess. I knew my brother had a mean, prideful streak, and I loved his reputation as the best fighter of the guard, but I did nothing to stop him, nor did I make any reports about his...
Her eyes flickered backward.
Character flaws. I am ready for whatever punishment you think I deserve. It's going to be the easiest thing about today.
Her last words were barely audible mutter, and Luna noticed the Pegasus shoot a small glance at Chaser. She let the motion slide without comment.
That is unnecessary, Guard's pony,
Luna said.
Report to Captain Nightshade on my order. This whole debacle was started over one of my guards not having adequate combat training, and the situation must be remedied immediately. Have Captain Nightshade schedule training hours for yourself and Guard's pony's Scarlet Shield. I know that I will be personally checking on his progress daily.
Ice Blossom nodded and saluted once more. She turned around, glaring at Chaser one more time, before she trotted from the throne room. Luna waited calmly for the doors to shut before she looked the Pegasus before her.
Stand before your judgment of your princess, Captain. We have much to talk about.
Chaser flinched slightly, but did as he was commanded. He limped forward, standing at attention before the throne. I submit myself fully to whatever judgment that pass upon me, princess, he said confidently. I know I have committed a horrible act, and I know that the fault of this incident lies squarely on my shoulders. Luna rose from her throne, walking slowly down the steps so that she could stare directly into his eyes, towering over the pony.
I am completely aware at who is at fault, Captain. Remain silent, she growled. It is that waggling tongue of yours that brought this incident to a head, and I will not have it continue.
Chaser nodded silently. Luna took a deep breath, and she began to pace slowly around the Pegasus.
Captain, answer each question honestly and as concisely as possible. Am I clear?
Chaser nodded. Yes, princess. Luna inspected the wound in his wing as Scalpel peeled back the hastily applied bandages. Elias had managed to clip the joint, and Chaser was lucky that the human had not swung harder. If he had, the limb might have been fully detached.
Did you or did you not attack Guardsman Bright first?
Chaser drooped slightly. I did, princess. I thought if I could knock him down, he would leave well enough alone.
If that is the case, then why did you provoke him again when God's pony Night Flash had talked to the human into walking away?
His ears pinned to the side of his head. I don't know, princess. I just felt angry when I saw the human. Like he had done something wrong, even though he didn't. Chaser frowned, then shook his head. That isn't it either. I can't explain it. Luna nodded as she prodded at a nasty-looking cut at his foreleg.
Would it be sufficient to say that you felt threatened by God's pony Bright? That he somehow challenged you by reputation or otherwise?
Chaser remained silent in thought for a moment before he nodded slowly. I suppose so, Princess. Luna sighed deeply.
That damn man, she grumbled. What a silly yet accurate metaphor, and from one so young no less.
Scalpel snorted and Luna spotted a small smirk on his face. It's probably because he's a young adult by experience in the body of a teenager. He's wise beyond his years. Even if Elias is an adult by human standards, it's apparent that all my scans that he is still growing. Maybe the humans just made their age less strange. Scalpel snorted again. Which makes me wonder just how he spent such a short time learning so much about the way of the world. Chaser looked at the unicorn in confusion. How old is he? Luna walked directly in front of Chaser, and the stallion snapped his gaze forward, falling back into attention. Luna stared at the stallion for a moment before she smiled.
19 years old, Captain. You decided to brawl with a 19-year-old today, and though you came out on top,
she looked pointedly at his injuries.
I believe that the young human did more than well enough for himself.
Chaser looked at her in open-mouthed horror. After a minute of silence, his jaw clamped close. Princess, I would request your permission to resign my command. I am not worthy of the position of captain, and I...
Denied, Captain.
Luna cut in.
It is the first part of your punishment. You will continue to serve as Royal Guard Captain with the knowledge that you instigated a fight with one who could still be legally considered a foal. If it makes you feel better, by his human standards, Guardsman Bright is an adult.
She snorted.
Though I think we both know that his standards do not matter here in any sort of manner, legal or otherwise.
Chaser sighed and nodded. Luna appreciated how guilty and horrified he still looked. It was a good sign. It meant he would likely put forth genuine effort to change his behavior. If I may, Princess, Chaser said, his voice low and submissive. What is the rest of my punishment? Luna frowned and resumed her pacing.
To be truthful with you, Captain, I do not know. While I have a fair list of punishments that I would match the crime, Guardsman Bright has personally requested that you remain largely unpunished. Some silly notion about the God's services and wolf packs and some such.
Scalpel snorted again but remained silent when Luna shot him a glare. The unicorn just shook his head with a smile as he rewrapped Chaser's injuries, applying minor healing spells as he went. Luna made a full cycle around Chaser as she continued.
To sum up this metaphor, Guardsman Bright believes that he is, and will continue to be, an instigative threat against all of our guard captains. Since he has fought and lost, to 2 already, he believes that any hostilities have been resolved now that you have claimed your right to lead. The notion is utterly ridiculous, and I'm curious if it's not a result of his injuries.
She paused and looked Chaser up and down.
But I respect his theory, and we shall see in the coming weeks if it is correct. As such, she continued, I need to devise a punishment suitable for shame you for your actions, while also ensuring that the Royal Guard does not pursue Guardsman Bright with some sort of foolhardy vendetta. I have made a great personal effort into making that human healthy, and I will not see it thrown away because of some silly notion of pact mentality.
Luna paused once more in front of the Captain Chaser. The pony wisely kept his mouth shut as she stared at him. Her thoughts were blank on the perfect punishment, something that was an oddity for her. She had designed the Counterlot torture chambers after all. This should be a breeze. As she combed through her ideas, a scroll popped into the air at her side. Luna caught it with her magic, and she quickly unrolled it, scanning the words quickly. It was the first of what she imagined would be witness reports. Ah, from Guard's pony Nightflash. Excellent. Despite his intimate relationship with Elias, he was not the fibbing type, and was likely one of the more credible sources. As she read through the report thoroughly, a devious smile spread across Luna's face. Oh, she had a punishment, all right. Rolling the scroll closed, Luna resumed her normal blank demeanor. Though he did well to hide it, Luna could see a bit of nervousness in Captain Chaser's eyes. Luna smiled lightly, which made the pony even more nervous.
I have just been inspired, Captain,
she proclaimed. She waved the scroll in her magic.
This is God Pony Nightflash's report, and I must say once more, the inciting incident is something that shouldn't have caused such an issue. I think that perhaps Guardsman Bright got it wrong. Perhaps you weren't angry because the human was a threat, but rather you were jealous that he asked for a different Royal Guards Pony to help train Scarlet Shield.
Chaser opened his mouth to protest, but a nasty glare from Luna warned him to remain silent. His jaw snapped shut and she continued.
As such, I think your punishment will be simple,
She said with a smile.
Your sister shows a very good measure of control, something I think you lack, Captain. As such, you will report to Captain Nightshade and will request that you will be allowed to join Ice Blossom's training sessions. She will teach you about managing your pride while she teaches Scarlet Shield about combat techniques, for the benefit of all, of course.
Luna could tell that the Pegasus wanted the protest, but after a moment of silent thinking, he sighed and nodded. Of course, Princess. I should be sure to attend each and every one of Ice Blossom's training sessions. Luna nodded.
Good. As soon as Scapula's finished, you are free to go.
Chaser nodded and saluted stiffly, grunting in pain as the wound in his foreleg bent. Scapula backed away. I'm as finished as I'm going to be until tomorrow. Come to the infirmary first thing, and I'll get you sorted out. Chaser nodded and bowed to Luna and Celestia before leaving. His head wasn't quite held high, but neither was he looking quite as ashamed as he was when she walked in. Luna shook her head. She had no idea how, but Elias was proving to be absolutely right. She needed to get close to the human soon, Luna decided. She smiled slightly at the thought about Elias, likely still curled around the pony in the infirmary. He would rest first, then she would strike. There we go. Chapter 15, Part 2 done. Finally got off that little nasty incident that happened in Chapter 14, but now we have a new development of a possible family, with the off chance of Elias becoming extremely more happy. Do you know who else is happy are my wonderful donators? Thank you, Chasely Master and Texture, for your support on this small channel. I really do appreciate it. If you've liked this reading, consider leaving a comment, a like, or subscribe down below. Every little bit helps, it really does. This has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.